oops, sorry, like I think they were just, I'm just copy yung emoji. Rocket emoji. Sige, ganito na lang. Who among you, like at least here have tried or have heard Flutter? Siguro mag-send na lang kayo ng kahit anong emoji. Like at least, let me start. Sige, mag-send na lang kayo ng emoji if you have tried or heard of Flutter. And let me know, like, siguro if some of you may want to share their experience, like advanced, beginner, but yeah, like I'm not sure if anyone is there. But yeah, like all right. So at least, like at least for this workshop, now this is going to be beginner friendly. Now we'll not try to dive in too much fury in terms of like discussing what are kind of like the ano ba yung mga gagamitin nating methods or classes. And but again, now this is going to be a bit more practical para makapag-dive in tayo right straight away to building a real Flutter project using Firebase as yung sinasabi nating backend for the app. So let me just, I'm not sure if it's moving. All right. So I think I've already had the intro. So at least, like in a nutshell, currently software engineer for a company in the US, helping build Flutter Philippines. And sometimes I write technical articles for CI/CD companies. Like I help them, like they digest or help like complex ideas into bite-sized chunks of articles that people love reading. And currently into stocks and trading. So I'm not sure if some of you are like playing Axie Infinity or like trading in US stocks. Let me know. Right, so at least with Flutter, before we even try going straight right away to the Flutter code, let's just try to understand first, like a high level overview what Flutter actually is. So at least flattery lang daw narinig. All right, so at least maybe most of you haven't heard of it. So I think it's a good thing that we start with understanding ano nga ba si Flutter. So si Flutter is a toolkit or what we call a UI toolkit, meaning it's a toolkit that allows you to create applications for mobile and the rest of the platforms. And like most of the things that you will be using from Flutter is what we call widgets. And on other, if you have already tried Android or iOS before, we kind of like refer to them as components. So UI components, widgets, so these are kind of like the things that we'll be discussing more in detail. It's a live workshop, but at least you know that Flutter is UI toolkit. And sorry, like I think maybe so. And this is a sample project that we have right now. Later on, we'll see is this in action. How can we add a stock sa portfolio natin? How can we update this one? How can we delete the portfolio from our portfolio app? So this is a simple portfolio tracking app that like I'll be sharing the code base with you, and like everything here is powered by Firebase. And I chose the project because it's pretty similar to what I do back in the US, at least even. And right now I'm in the Philippines, but yeah, I'm building for stock trading company, catering US customers. And again, Flutter is not just for mobile. It's a framework that is being used for creating beautiful UIs for all platforms. Sorry, like I think there's so it's not just for Flutter, it's also for web, desktop, and Linux. So whatever platform, kung meron kayong Windows laptop or Linux laptop, you can also use it for building Flutter apps. And yung tinatawag nating concept in terms of like the structure, the way we write code, meaning later on kapag nakita nyo yung code base, this is what it looks like. We have like may mga widgets tayo na named containers, row, text, and it's declarative in a sense that if you know that if it's a text widget, like this will display a text in your app. So that's declarative. It requires little to no thinking of what this specific widget looks like. as you add more and more widgets sa code. So later on, ngayon, konti lang yung widgets natin, but if you're actually building a real production app, like this will be a lot of widgets. So that's the good thing about declarative, like medyo straightforward siya. So as long as you know it's text or container, it's a box or div sa HTML, sobrang siya, magiging intuitive or natural yung pag-design ng widget for apps. And we have nested widgets. So there's a concept of nested widgets in which a lot of these widgets will have child parameter, meaning if one widget can contain another widget, it will expose a child parameter. In most cases, everyone has it, but some of it don't. Like for example, custom components, gagawin natin to later. Text, si text, it cannot contain another widget on its own. So wala siyang child parameter, but it has parameter like style para makapag-add kayo ng styling sa text. But yeah, that's for nested widgets. You can also create custom widgets. So with Flutter, it makes it easy for us to create custom widgets. So again, widgets is like the components that we use to create the UI for our app. And out of the box, meron tayong tinatawag na material design. So I'm not sure if may nakarinig na ng material design from from the audience, but let me know if meron. And yung material design is Google's design language. So out of the box, meron na si Flutter na mga widgets like scaffold, meaning like kapag nag-add tayo ng stock dito, meron na tayong mga app bar by default. Kapag ginamit natin si scaffold, meron tayong mga safe area para if may notch yung device mo, you can pretty much still showcase the UI in full form. So at least yun yung material UI and material components, which is out of the box, comes from the Flutter SDK. So you don't have to build all of this from scratch, but rather you can just import it by using the classes. But again, you can create custom widgets. As mentioned dito, meron tayong mga custom widgets. Like for example, portfolio balance. Yung portfolio balance is if tinanggal natin ito and press R, naka-hot reload tayo, mawawala siya. And this portfolio balance is not something that comes right out of the box, so Flutter SDK. This is a custom widget that we built. So we have class, portfolio balance, and stateless widget. So later on, we'll see this in action. How can we create one, and how can you customize the widgets of your app? And the good thing about creating widgets is it makes sense for you to create widgets, especially if like yung specific widget or component na yon can be reused. So for example, instead you trying to paste a couple of like kung ano man yung content nitong custom box, you can just simply call custom box twice, and this will showcase like two custom box in the UI after running the Flutter project. And that's mostly for UI, not Flutter. It's mostly for UI, but it has other benefits. Flutter is not just for building great UIs that you've seen earlier, but it's also for like allows developers. If you're already in the industry, there will be a lot of quirks and intricacies in terms of like working with a large team or working with a fast-paced environment, meaning may mga companies na mabilis mag-release, may mga companies na may mga tight deadlines. And the cool thing about Flutter is it allows you to work on a single code base. So meaning like before, if mayroon tayong developers for Android, which like supports a lot of different varying screen sizes, we also have the equivalent for iOS. Although it has lesser screen like variations, it's still difficult to keep them intact, to keep them in to keep the UI 100% close to each other. And also the bug fixes, the issues that you may encounter on Android might not be found on iOS because new developers na gumawa ng iOS, it's different, or yung mga developers gumawa ng Android has a better sense of what they're doing. So things like that, if you're in the industry, may mga ganong scenario in which you get to compare the issues, the challenges that each platform encounters. So at least with Flutter, you are more likely to face yung sinasabi nating platform, specific bug, meaning sometimes may experience mo siya, but most of the time you'll just focus on the UI part of things and yung pag-integrate ng APIs like Firebase and JSON. And with Flutter too, it's again, we've been talking about Flutter for mobile, but Flutter is more than just UI toolkit for mobile. It's also available for the web, Linux, macOS, and Windows. And it has a lot of new features coming in from Flutter 2 this year, and meron pa tayong recent release from Flutter 2.8, which it's not probably related to you, but at least you know that the latest release meron tayong performance improvements, like 50% improvements startup ng app, so which is great. Now, if you are working on a project that's going to be used by millions or thousands, then it makes sense for us to ensure the quality of the app, not just the looks and feel, but actually the performance and functions of the app. Or it's not moving. Again, these are the platforms, meaning ito yung devices in which Flutter can be built. Third feature of Flutter is that it allows you to stay productive. Again, since it's only in single code base, you'll likely be working with both themes, iOS and Android, and you'll build fast. You'll ship faster than you used to if you're using native platforms. But again, there's a lot of trade-offs working with iOS and Android, native and Flutter, but we'll not try to discuss them in detail. So it's still a case-to-case basis, depending on the size of the team or the budget. I still recommend you trying out iOS and Android natively. At least with Flutter, it supports hot reload. So a while ago, you have witnessed, if we tried removing this one, save R, that will be reflected right away. With iOS and Android native, it also has equivalent build system that can do this. And ngayon, if you are listening to this, like to this workshop, I might be giving you the GitHub project at the very end of the talk, but as of now, you can also try dartpad.dev. So meaning you can go visit this website, try out yung counter app. So at least with this one, you don't have to install yung dependency or Flutter SDK sa computers. You can just go over the browser, visit this one, and you'll see how Flutter code is structured. But again, no, it's not as fast yung pag meron kayong Flutter sa mismong computer nyo, but at least you'll get the insight or the overview how things look like sa flutter.dev. So again, like hopefully this one is already installed sa SDK or later on after you rewatch this video. You just have to have a Flutter SDK installed, some editors, and I think with the Flutter installation that should include most of the emulators and device. So yeah, you can just choose whatever editor you want.
Oh, sakit. No.
Sorry, I think there's someone. I'm not sure.
Hey guys, please unmute your I mute your
nagulat ako.
your mic.
No worries.
May naka-open pa pong isa. I'm sorry for the interruption.
No worries. It's a fun icebreaker. Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. So at least for yung Flutter, we've been talking about yung UI for Flutter. We've been talking about yung single code base for Flutter. Right now, let's try actually diving into the practical side of Flutter, meaning actually working with the app. Kasi ito mostly theory, and I think this will be the foundations. But again, there's a lot more to learn other than the slides that I've shown you, but it's definitely a good foundation. At least, that these are kind of like the most important parts. And for the commands, there are a lot of commands as well, but this is probably the most important ones. After the installation of your Flutter SDK, meron tayong commands like that will be available to your terminal. So we have Flutter Doctor. This command is going to be used for checking whether the installation of the SDK was successful or not. So if we try to run that command, Flutter Doctor V, right now I'm using Visual Studio Code. This is the command. So it's depends on how fast your computer is, but right now I think there's a lot of issues sa installation ko. Okay, I haven't updated my tool chain, but definitely if most of the stuff here checks out, you're good to go, especially with Flutter SDK. So this checks out. I also have Android Studio, have VS Code plugin installed, IntelliJ, and devices. So right now I have one device connected, as that's iPhone SE, and we can use that for now. Flutter create, we'll not be creating a new project right now, but you can just, if you're running Flutter right now, you can just Flutter create and space new project name. And last but not least is yung Flutter Run. So right now, I will not be rerunning the app again because it takes time, at least for the first time. But yung succeeding runs, like ngayon, hot reload natin, nagpe-press lang ako ng R, it's way faster. It's sub-second. Pero itong Flutter Run, it takes time, like probably give it 1 to 2 minutes. It will install dependencies or download latest versions of the packages if like your project is outdated. So at least that's the command for running the Flutter project. And yeah, we'll start from here with Firebase. And we've been talking about Flutter, talking about Flutter as a UI. How can we make our UI even more dynamic, even more useful for the user? So again, yung app na gagawin natin for today is going to be a stock portfolio app, meaning we're going to save whatever portfolio we have bought from a stock trading platform, for example. And this is kind of like the UI that I've written, or sorry, I've designed. And you can just see that here that we have the homepage where it lists all the portfolio. And the listing is where the items listed here is going to be stored in Firebase. So later we'll see it. What service are we going to use? And similar to this, if we have click update or save, it will also call a Firebase API. And yung sinasabi nating Firebase API, think of it as a method that we call for us to execute or call the database changes. So don't have to be too technical on that one. And all right, so all right, so at least for Firebase, again, it's a tool that is built by or it's owned by Google that allows developers to write back-end-less applications, meaning you don't have to write the back-end infrastructure. You can just use their APIs and services as you try and build a production app. So for cloud messaging, now these are just some of the services that is very famous. What Firebase is famous for. So I think about push notifications. So if you get kind of like notification from BDO or Food Panda or Grab, like some of them may be powered by Firebase. We don't know, but Firebase push notifications or cloud messaging is what we use to engage the customers natin and to users ng app in case of like there's a reminder going on or there's a prompt that we need from our client or users. Another one is authentication. So if you have seen yung mga tinatawag nating what they call this, OAuth. Yeah, mga OAuth, in which instead of you entering passwords or entering email, you're just going to use whatever social account you have in case the app supports it. So at least with Firebase, you can just toggle enable for Firebase, Twitter, or Google, and pretty much it will work. Sometimes my configuration, but most of the time it works by just toggling the button. And Cloud Firestore, this is another famous service of Firebase. And with Cloud Firestore, this allows us to publish changes real time, so users. So if one user updates his portfolio, this can also be read by another user. But again, that's not the scenario that we want. But what I'm telling is, like this updates the database, and whoever is allowed to read your portfolio or details, this can be shared to that user. And this works great, no, for both mobile and web. But right now, in the context of Flutter, we'll try it for iOS. And we'll be using Firebase Firestore because it takes time to set, especially this one, push notifications. So I think it makes sense. And this is also, I think, the most used among these three because, like our apps right now is dynamic. There's little to no apps in the App Store that is static. Otherwise, they will have to re-upload yung mga APKs again and again sa Play Store. So Firestore, now we've mentioned that it's a database for real-time synchronization. And as you can see here, we're just adding a new item. Tapos magsisave na siya sa list and it updates whoever is listening or whoever is allowed listening sa data changes natin. The good thing about Flutter, Firebase Firestore is that, as mentioned, yung Firebase, meaning back-endless siya. Ibig sabihin, it's still a back-end service, but you will not set up yung infrastructure ng back-end. Like, for example, you don't have to set up yung database, like, like choosing which database, like Postgres or MongoDB. You don't have to set up yung VM instance natin sa AWS or like whatever virtual machine you're using for back-end stuff. At least with Firebase, you can just use yung APIs na gagamitin natin later on. And it's pretty cheap, especially if you're trying out how to build a dynamic applications or real-time applications. But it's also used, no? It's not just for MVP apps. It's also being used by a lot of companies nowadays. Previously, we're using this at a company that I work for. 40 million users namin, and we're using Firebase push notifications. So imagine the scale. No, don't just think of Firebase as a tool for MVP, but like it's also being used by big companies with a lot of users. So at least that's mostly for the introduction for the two technologies that we're using, Flutter and Firebase. And at least for the workshop, we're going to discuss or at least work with the following: the UI walkthrough of the app with Figma, Firebase integration. We'll try to see what are the packages that we're going to use in the integration, and how can we execute CRUD commands, meaning create, read, update, and delete. So I think that's the most fundamental thing you need to learn in building dynamic apps. And the following is are some of the APIs, or what we call tools that is available from the Firebase package that we're going to use in Flutter. Let me just drink for a moment. Okay. Let's try. Let's start with the first one. So I have the outline. Let me just prepare the code for you guys. Okay, let me just let's stop. Okay, for a moment. Let me just prepare the app. All right. So right now, this is the right now this is the Figma So yung Figma is a tool for us, developers or designers, create the UI part of our application, from our imagination or from ideas to design that can be converted later on to actual code. So I think we've went through this, but let's just go over the app right away. So yung structure ng project natin, it's almost similar to yung initial configuration from a counter app, but I would normally structure my project depending on the scale of the project. Since this one is a very simple one, I just figure we can just separate it to two main folders, common, meaning the directories na sinishare natin across different features of the app. And we have the actual features. And as you can see here, we have two major features. When we mean major, like we have yung actual business logic ng app natin, which is at least the first one is yung homepage, and the other one is yung order page. So those are the two major features of the app, and we just have to separate them in these two directories. And the other important part of this project is yung tinatawag nating pubspec.yaml. So this is on the root of the project, and think of this one as the manifest, meaning this is the single source of truth. What are the images being shown in the app? What are the packages being used by the app? So with this one, the dependencies that we're going to use, also the version is here. At least for the dependencies, meaning ito yung existing packages that we can use to speed up development. In here, we're using Firebase Core in Cloud Firestore and also Google Fonts. So that's what power this beautiful fonts here. And for you to be able to see which package are going to use or version are going to use from a package, you can just simply search here Firebase Core or Firebase, and in pub.dev, that's pub.dev, and you can pretty much open whatever package you need to use, and with pub.dev it automatically displays an example how you can install it on your app, and the version. You can click this one and you can copy it on your dependency, but right now we're not using this package, so let's just remove it. Provider is just a simple state management and dependency injection, but it's not a topic that we're going to discuss, but rather we'll just discuss this one. Let's try to modify muna itong screen na to. It looks a bit odd, why it's color red, so let's try. So with Flutter coming with a material design, we can have blue accent here. Like you see material design, it comes right like with some of the predefined colors like accent color or primary color, and it's automatically something that you can use as you start modifying your project. But the cool thing about Flutter, it's very flexible. You can also try changing it to the color that suits your team's design. So for example, if see for the F, I think this is yellow. So yeah, so something like that. And you can change the height, you can change the width, but no, we're not going to focus on the small details for the widgets, but rather on displaying yung stocks. So right now we have to-do list here. And right, so right now we've already added Flutter. So let's try to create a new Firebase project muna. Create DSC-TUP. All right, so I have that project isn't taken yet. So we will be the first one to get DSC-TUP ID. So that's going to be DSC-TUP ID. So yung Firebase project, you can just go with yung Firebase console. So, oops, sorry. Yung packages natin pub.dev. So let me just paste it here. Yung Firebase console natin, this is where you can create a Firebase project. So, yeah, we have already created a project, and The next step, at least for this one, is to create a project for iOS, since we're mostly going to modify or render the UI in an iOS app. Ano ba yung requirements for an iOS app? One is you have to, at least, that's kind of like the trade-off. You have to have a Mac OS machine, like either MacBook or MacBook Air or desktop app. Sorry, Mac Mini. Otherwise, like it'll be difficult for you to work on a real iOS app, because it requires yung certain requirements from Apple, like Xcode. So in Xcode, this is a way for you to develop iOS apps. But again, don't be discouraged by that. You can also still run your apps on Android. So I'm not sure what's the bundle identifier for this one. So meaning yung ID ng project natin. Okay, we can just copy this one. We can go over build Gradle, tapos go invest. Android, I'm sorry, iOS. I'm not sure if that's similar for iOS. So I think it's similar for iOS. Yeah, okay. iOS, register. And this will provide you a JSON services file. So ito, tinuturo yung instructions where to put it. So hopefully we'll get this right. marami na na-download na ganitong file dito sa PC ko. So let's see. Let's skip this, continue console, and go over the project. Let me just open yung, sorry. All right, so ito yung Google Services file natin. We already have yung existing Google Services file from this project, but we can just simply replace this one with the new one. So think of it as if ni-replace lang natin yung file with the Google Services. So later on, you'll just do the same thing. Right, so at least right now, nalagay natin Google Services file, meaning this project is now linked, or at least it knows that it will be linked, or it uses this specific Firebase project on the console. And next step for this one is to run again the project with the new version. And let's go over Firestore. Now, this is the database that we've been talking about earlier, and how you can use this one to store the details ng portfolio natin. So if you try to click create database, let's select test mode, because this is a bit more stricter in terms of like authentication. But right now, let's just use test mode, because yeah, so we can go quickly on this one. Select Asia. Let's see if merong Asia South East. Okay, so yung location natin is where yung mga server is going to, like, at least where our Firebase project is going to use, like yung server location, meaning if it's in Southeast Asia, it's a lot closer to our user base. If you're targeting Philippines, then it makes more sense for you to use the location that's nearest, meaning it has lesser latency. Now, instead of you choosing US, for example, then the latency might be a bit, it's a challenge, because it will, the traffic is from US to Philippines, back and forth. So think of how slow, like the slowness or the latency, like yung communication between our app and yung Firebase server. So select Southeast Asia if you're targeting Philippines, since we're on Southeast Asia. Hopefully you're aware. Maybe some of you might think that we are on, yeah, that's a political issue. So we'll skip that. All right. So let me just, right. I'm not sure if this is working, but I think this should take pretty quick. I'm sure if my internet's a bit slow right now, but let's wait for this one. Woo-hoo. Right, so it works. And next thing that we're interested in creating is collections. So if you have already tried yung NoSQL, or sorry, like SQL, if you have noticed, we have tables, columns, and rows. But for NoSQL, we have this concept of NoSQL, in which it has concepts of collections and documents. So in a collection, it can have one or more documents. So think of it as in a table, it's similar to a row data. So let's just add portfolios here as a collection. And let's skip this part. So I think we can create one muna. Tapos, let's see. Ticker ID can have ito na yung mga properties ng document natin. So, company, oops, company Tesla, I'm a fan of Tesla. Market price, let's say 100, para mabilis siya ma-multiply later. Shares, kunwari meron tayong 5 shares. Purchase price, magkano natin siya nabili. It's either nabili natin siya kunwari 90 pa. Right? So save. So it's already here. Oh, I think. All right. So right now it's not yet displaying here, but it's already on our database. Why? So I think in the homepage, we don't have something or the API that's going to listen to changes. So in Flutter, we have this widget called Stream Builder, right? So Stream Builder, this is a widget. No, you don't have to memorize yung syntax. Eventually, like you'll feel more comfortable dealing with this kind of complexities of Flutter. But at least for now, you're aware that yung Firebase Firestore kasi it's real time, meaning if there's a new change, you don't have to let the user know to pull to refresh, for example, but rather you are publishing those changes right away. And that's what Stream Builder is good for. It listens dun sa whatever changes that you made here, and it automatically publishes the changes so as long as the app is opened, and it will render the for example, the snapshot of that database change. Snapshot. And for example, company. Let's say async snapshot, query snapshot. I have cheat sheets here, so don't worry about it. We'll just have right now. Let's just try displaying text, no? Like for simplicity. Hello. Right now it does nothing but display text. Okay, so we can add list view at the top, meaning we can like display lists of items. So it's very straightforward and very declarative. We've been mentioning a lot, like medyo English term din siya. So it feels natural to add this widgets later on for you. So let's say children. So if we want to add text multiple times. All right, so right now it's not showing because of there's no height, but we can do something like this. All right, so whatever change is made here, it's already reflected. But one thing that's interesting for us is to go over the snapshot data, meaning this is where we can read. We can read the items from Firebase. So let's place this. And let me check what's wrong with this data. Let me check. So snapshot docs. All right, so let's add new container here lang. All right, so it means it just requires us to add something sa child. So kanina, we are adding hello multiple times. Right now, we're just going to add once. And later on, let's try to parse yung data. Parse meaning we'll try to read yung data from company. So right now, I'm reading yung company details, which is this one, Tesla. So actually, this should be sentence case instead of uppercase. All right, so right now it's null because we haven't really added some checks whether this data is null, but later on we'll try to improve it. So to connect your Firestore, no, first one is yung meron tayong Google Services file, but right now we're going to read yung collection. So the name of our collection is portfolios. So this one is portfolio, so we'll have to change portfolios. So Firebase instance, this is a static instance, dot collection, meaning it reads this specific collection, and snapshots, meaning it subscribes to this specific collection, and whatever changes this collection has, whether it's from an item change or whether if you have deleted or added new document, this will be reflected on this snapshot and whoever is listening to it. So right now we will be listening it through Stream Builder. So we have a property stream, click paste portfolio stream. Let's just try to restart. I'm not sure why it's not. So Firebase collection, portfolios. Let's see what went wrong. So there's a part where we have to debug the code. All right, so cast error. Async snapshot. Right, let me check what went wrong. Let me just check muna, like what are the. All right, so let me just restart the project muna. Since we've changed this one, now like we have to recompile at least yung native part ng iOS. Okay. So this will take like a few minutes, but it shouldn't take long. So let's just wait for it to finish. All right. Great. So right now it's already loading yung data. So initially, like there were just some changes that we've made in the Google Services file, meaning, like we have a different project now. Before it might be using a different project, but yeah, at least right now it's working. So if we transfer this one, then split screen, paste it here. As you can see here, if we try to change in Tesla's, that is automatically reflected dun sa app natin. And if we add more items there, like for example, I'm not sure if this is still using Facebook, market price, one share price, shares. purchase price. We purchase it at, for example, nalugi tayo, 75. We have ticker ID, FB, which is actually now Meta. And auto ID, save it. So right now it's being reflected here. Okay, so at least right now we know this is already loading the data from Firebase. Let's just go over and build everything in Flutter, meaning this is where we'll start adding features to add items and features to remove items. So right now, let's just try to style it. Now that right now it's not that presentable, so let's try to use container. So right now I will not discuss everything in detail, but like watch and see how fast we can design this one. So back of my head, maybe you can add border ranges. This is just me trying to experiment now with different parameters of the item. So this is how fast you can iterate from the idea of the design to actually doing something almost similar to this. So for example, we have space bottom 16. I can only split screen with two views. I can do that, but right now we can only do two items at once in one screen. So it's not yet similar. Maybe something like 50. That's bad. So maybe white, maybe black 12. All right, so it's almost there. 2.5. All right, so it's almost similar na. And again, I've already designed most of the items here, so at least you see how fast now we can work with a lot of the UI stuff quickly in Flutter. Right now, since I already have the designs for it already, we have the custom widget. We'll just go over and use it. Oops, sorry. I think this is using a different. All right. So string is not a subtype of double. So what is that? I mean, int. Okay, so this is expecting int. So meaning nagawa natin strings to shares. Let's just go over this one. Update. Let's go over this one and update. String is not a subtype of double. Market price. Let me check for a moment. Shares, market price, purchase price, sticker ID. So right now I'm just looking at the properties. Not sure if this is related to shares or something. Oh, interesting. Right. So market price is also double. So we'll use double here, 100. Not sure about purchase price. Also for purchase price, right? Yeah, we have used string. So that's funny. And now let's just use a number for everything. Woohoo. That's how quickly you can iterate with both platforms, Flutter and Firebase. So int, and again, it's not a subtype of double. So that's really weird because there's no specific. Let's just add decimal for the meantime. Okay, so let's just use real decimals. But later on, we can fix that by actually doing parsing later. So to be honest, we can actually do it right as here. So for example, we can do something like int.parse, this one, double.parse, double.parse. Ngayon, we have string. Int is not a subtype of string. Oh, so right now let's just go with change database change for now. Let me just quickly change this one. But later on that, I think that's the fastest way to do it. Like we can just do double that part instead of us trying to force this one to become a int or double. So right now, why is it still? So shares, all right. Shares 2.5. All right, so it's showing. Woohoo. And I'm curious why it's not showing the padding. It's just four. And yeah, that's a real-time database. Or sorry, Firestore was showing real-time database updates. And we've almost hit this one. And like you can also add more stocks here. Like for example, let's try. So if you're thinking, like you're wondering where are we getting the assets? So it's already here. Now I've had hard-coded Netflix assets app. So if I've added, sorry, this is supposed to be Tesla, but I'm not sure why. I think I loaded. I think I don't have a Tesla. Sorry, I think we don't have a Tesla here, but rather we have Netflix. So I think I haven't added. Yeah, I haven't added Tesla here. So it defaults to Netflix. So let me just quickly change that. So it makes more sense for us to look at. And Flix. Hopefully some of you have been dabbling around investments already. So this is a good start. Okay, now we've already finished read, and at least in the backend, we have added the create, or we have tried adding items to the documents. Right now, let's just add the functionality, to save stock. So right now it does nothing because we're adding, like we're not actually saving stock. So go over the order page, and we have different components here. Like one is for accepting inputs for symbol, purchase price, and the number of shares that you bought. So there's a simple math around this. So this is just multiplication, but the most concern that we have here is, most pressing concern we have here is to add a function that if we try to press save stock, so this is the save stock button, this does something to the database. So let's try to create a function here. Future, meaning it's going to take some time, so we have to wait for it to finish. Save stock async. We call save stock here. It's await. So right now it does nothing. Like I said, this specific function doesn't have code block in it. So I'm not going to specific, but rather just place it here and explain how things are being saved or stored. So for example, we have sorry, let me just add the default value here. All right, so for example, we have a function already here. So right now, if I try to press save stock, it will save stock. But right now, let's just try to go over some of the basics here. So at least for every input field, there should be an equivalent text editing controller, meaning there's someone out there in the code, like listening to the changes or the inputs. So if you try to click save stock, we can check what is the input of the user. So at least for the symbol.text, meaning whatever input that we've added here, for example, Google, is going to be saved as a ticker ID. So ticker ID is in the database, it's a parameter again of the document. Same for company. I've just updated the format, but it should be the name of the company. Purchase price, for example, we bought it at 2,500. Right now, the market price is 2,700. So there's no market price for 2,700 because in most cases, this will be updated in an app, trading app real time. And number of shares. So this is a simple math, just multiplies that. And click save. Then let's try to add run hot reload. Save it, click save stock. So right now, I'm not sure why it's not working. So the issue why it's not saving is that it uses an incorrect portfolio ID. So right now, as you can see, portfolio, it's not using portfolios. So this is portfolios. Goog 2000. I'll just go over this quickly. And again, I guess this just I think this is just related. Let me just delete this once more. I think we can have checks later on. Feel free to improve the app. Sorry, we should delete the entire document. All right. So again, let's try for the second time. 1,500. Number of shares 5, and we've added Google. All right. So right now it's already showing Google, but I think it's just the database value that shows Google incorrectly, but that should be fine. So I think we can just do something like this. Let's just revert this. And right now, the next interesting part for us here is to delete this specific item or to update. So right now it's not showing anything, but if we want to update yung details ng item na yon, we can create a new button here. Then we'll be able to finish this after delete. So save your questions if you have any. Just go over. I'll just include delete as well, so we can go straight right away to both delete and update. But instead of us trying to update it here, so dashboard, we can just simply do it within the app. So update. Again, these two methods does nothing because they don't have a function yet. All right, so it does nothing. But if I want this to function, like to work, we can just add the function. At least we can delete it first, right? So let's just try deleting it first. And again, the collection is portfolios. And let's try deleting Google. So copy the ID. So later on, you can also improve this by getting the ID from the home page so that you can actually delete it without hard coding the doc ID. But that's more Flutter specific. This one is Flutter or Firebase. So this one is reading the document. So it's reading Google document and just call delete function. And if you try to delete this, so right now it's not showing the details, but every time we open the order page, this just deletes the hard-coded ID here. And this should remove Google from the list. Now, we want to create a new stock again. Let's bring back Google. 25 and save stock. So this brings back Google. And if you try to press Google or the add stock page, so again, this is still showing Google. Or loading Google, but it's not showing the UI. Let's try updating this one. So like right now the update function is empty. And let's see what is the ID of the Google ticker. So copy, update the document, and add the function set. So there's a function set, and as if you are adding the new stock. So similar function, but we're just using set here. So Google, alphabet. So right now we want to change the company name. So right now it's using company name as Google. Let's just save it to alphabet. So click update stock. So there's an error. So let me just Google, let's say 11 and portfolios, right? Click update stock, and that should change it from Google or Google to alphabet. So like under 20 minutes or 25 minutes, we've been able to integrate the full, or at least the foundational APIs on what makes an app dynamic, which is CRUD methods. And like again, not if you have any question, let me know. But at least that's where we wrap up the workshop. And I just want to leave it with you that Firebase and Flutter is kind of like not a one size fits all solution, but it's a good way, it's a good start for you to experiment on, try it out. If you have awesome ideas, Flutter and Firebase is really going to be a perfect combination for like, especially if you're starting with development. So give it a try. This is not a one size fits all solution, but with Flutter coming along pretty well with Firebase, because they have the same team, same engineers, same company managing them, which is Google, it's super easy to go over the documentations. It feels almost similar as if you're reading one document from the other and the other vice versa. Some resources, if you want to start Flutter, flutter.dev, start. And for code labs, I recommend going over to the code labs because it's really helpful, especially if you want practical hands-on learning rather than reading and going over the docs. So yeah, that's pretty much it from my end. And let me know if you have any questions.
So, all right. Thank you, Sir Joshua. So, guys, if you have questions, ask lang po kayo kasi we have Q&A portion na 5 minutes. So, ayan. First question po, galing po sa ating participant, Sir Joshua.
Mhm.
Is it possible to create Flutter application through virtual machine in the cloud and run it in his actual device?
Right. Yeah, it's possible. Especially this is pretty useful if you don't have one example that I can think of, if you don't have a Mac OS device. So we have service called Mac in the cloud. So like before I had this, I had workmates, like during COVID, we don't have any device, Mac OS device, because like we're pretty much forced to leave the office, and the Mac OS devices was in the office back then in BGC, and in the house, like or other like own places, they use this service called Mac in the cloud, which is a virtual a machine that like spins up Mac OS environment, and they've been pretty much building iOS apps there, also Flutter apps. So it's pretty much possible. Yeah, and also like in the virtual environment machine, if you guys are familiar with what they call CI/CD, it's pretty much using virtual machine in most cases. So it's possible. Yeah.
So next question po, can we use actual device than the emulator? If yes, how can we set up it? And are we able to create our own widget?
Right. Emulator. Yeah, we can use actual device. Yeah, we can use actual device for the project. So if you're running on a very small, a slow PC, I would recommend doing that, especially because emulators and simulators for iOS takes so much of your hardware resource, especially RAM and hardware disk space. So it at least it helps your PC, like to actually like run smoothly, build your app smoothly, and yeah. So I'd recommend doing that. Oh, I'll have another follow-up question. And yeah, for creating your own widget, you can do it as well for both emulators and simulators. If that's not sure if that's the exact question for that one.
So next question, Booster. Do you recommend any backend other than Firebase for Flutter? And what backend you prefer and why?
I think there are a couple of competitors. Like there's the MongoDB. There's also Supabase. So Supabase is also kind of like a Firebase alternative. So that's something that you might want to check out. Other than that, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. Like you can also build your own backend infrastructure, and yeah, pretty much you can use anything with Flutter. That's a cool thing about Flutter. Like it's not a framework that is tightly coupled with the best practices that the industry has, but rather it's a toolkit in which it focuses mainly on the UI part of things, but it works well with integrations, right? So whether it's a third party or your own backend, you can pretty much use Flutter anywhere. Yeah.
So, all right. Last questions po. What are the specifications in order to run Flutter?
Yeah. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly what's the specification, but I'm pretty sure it should be on Flutter.dev. At least right now, I think it could run on, at least for the RAM, I'm pretty sure that it's pretty solid right now for M1 Max on 8 gigs. But in most cases, I'd recommend you guys getting 16 gigs of RAM. For the CPU, I don't think it's CPU extensive unless you're doing VR or high computational stuff. For hardware, so as long as you have a pretty good disk space, especially if using HDD, that's pretty slow. You might want to have some buffer, or threshold for free space for your development machine. Other than that, like pretty standard. If you're doing iOS, you need to have an Mac OS machine. Android, any machine can do. Yeah.
All right, guys, if you have other questions, just message us on our Facebook page and we will forward it to our guest speaker. So thank you so much, Mr. De Guzman, for making this workshop enjoyable and at the same time informative for our participants. So as a token of appreciation, I'd like to present this certificate to Mr. De Guzman for giving his time to lead this workshop. Okay, Google Developer Student Clubs or GDSC, Technological University of the Philippines, Manila, present this certificate to Mr. Joshua De Guzman for imparting valuable insights in the event GTech Summit 2021, Getting Grounded with Google Technologies, given this 12th day of December 2021 via Zoom, web conferencing, and signed by our GDSC lead and president, Justin Nicole S. Barbe, and our Chief Executive Officer, Giancarlo P. Discioso.